Hello, everyone. This is my instructional strategy presentation for EDRD 730 with Dr. Yang Wang. Interest Surveys, Questionnaires, and Interviews by Jennifer Phillips on July 24th, 2021. Interest surveys, questionnaires, and interviews. Let's find out who they are, what they know, what they want to know, how they want to know it, and what makes them tick. So what are interest surveys, questionnaires, and interviews? Well, it's a complicated answer if you want to get into the weeds, but for all our intentional purposes, an interest survey is usually a short answer or yes or no question to find out people's likes and dislikes, so you can kind of get to know them in a nutshell. Then they're further analyzed to find out how best to help each student or what your students have in common. So like, what's your name? What's your favorite color or subject or sports team? What's your favorite book or TV show? Those are quick answers. They can just jot down real quick. Questionnaires are a little bit more in-depth and may have an open-ended question requiring more thought. They're basically for gathering information about how you think or how the students think and what they actually know. So for instance, that would be, what do you like about history? What do you not like about history? What's your favorite historical event, or what do you think about global warming? So that's a questionnaire. It kind of gets a little bit more in depth and digs into them a little bit. Interviews, you can use interviews so many ways. They can be quick and short. You can use them with an entire classroom. They're more back and forth, so you can get an answer and then go down that lane or take a different direction and ask them something different. But it's feedback, and you can actually get a lot of information. You can do it one-on-one, or you can do it with the whole class. And it's even fun if you let them interview you as a teacher and get to know you. So why are interest surveys, questionnaires, and interviews so important? Well, first of all, we need to know our students so that we can help them be their best. Having background knowledge helps us know how to help them. Students may have learning challenges that teachers need to know about. Personal information about their likes, dislikes, strengths, weaknesses, stressors, personal issues play a major factor in how they approach their education. So educators need to ask the questions. The better we know our students, the better we can help them be their best. The many factors affect their school performance, but having the background knowledge that we gain through the surveys and questionnaires can help us understand and better assist them. Knowing our students enables us to support and challenge them in a way that benefits them, the class, and also us. Knowing the class as a whole can also help the structure or fine-tune the class curriculum around their preferred learning methods. So you might be asking yourself, how do I use questionnaires, surveys, and interviews? Well, first you got to consider the age of your students, because how you approach it is going to be different based on what they're able to respond. Then you got to figure out what you want or need to know from them. There are many different types of data gathering tools that you can use. Many teachers use these forms at the beginning of the school year as an icebreaker, and then again halfway through the year. So if you're teaching middle or high school students, halfway surveys are exit surveys for the first semester and get to know me surveys for the incoming class. Elementary students don't change classrooms throughout the year for the most part, and but they grow and they change. So do their interests, they grow and they change rapidly. So somebody who might have been interested in dinosaurs is now interested in astronauts. So you got to keep up because they need you to keep up. End of the year surveys and questions also provide feedback for us on what the students liked and didn't like about our class. It also provides us personal feedback for our lesson plans and our professional development, so that we can be the best that we can be. Some teachers use them throughout the year for specific content areas to establish levels of knowledge and specific interest areas. For example, if a teacher is going to cover World War II, knowing the different interest areas within this topic can help break students up into smaller groups with common interests for more productive small group projects. So somebody might want to cover the military aspect. Some people might want to cover the Holocaust aspect. Some people might want to cover, the global aspect of it and what was going on over in the Pacific. So there's lots of different groups that can function in one big topic area, and you can interest all your kids. Another way to maintain class energy and cohesion are fun surveys. You can add these to your regular surveys, or you can introduce them as a way to kind of pep up and get some energy back in your classroom. They're fun and they can get crazy, and you can decide whether these crazy questions have no relevance to the class at all, or maybe they do. For instance, what's your favorite planet? Tacos versus cheeseburgers versus pizzas. Duran Duran versus Depeche Mode. Who? Star Trek versus Star Wars. Duh. Either way, you are still learning more about your students and creating a bond and trust. All right, step by step. First of all, it's important to assess the age group and what information you need and want to gather. So are we working with young children, older elementary children, middle or high school kids? What type of information do they have that we need to retrieve? What are their levels of reading, writing, and comprehension? Is this going to be a pre-reading, a comprehensive, or an exercise-based tool? How do we plan on using the information that we're going to gather? So those help us form the questions that we're looking for. The next thing we do is select our format, topic, and type of questions. Depending on our assessments in the first step, we may need to decide that the class is younger students who's going to require a survey with yes or no answers or drawn pictures, or our students are older and may be capable of open-ended questionnaires that require advanced thought. So are we looking for reading, or writing, or content-based questions? First, we got to choose the questions that we want to ask, and then decide whether we want to use paper and pencil or digital online formats. And then finally, we got to compose or acquire the materials that we're going to present to them. Which brings us to the next step, present the question to the students. But first, we have to let them know why this is important and why we need the information. Students respond positively to having a sense of control and understanding that their efforts in this survey are going to make their education more interesting and more valuable to them. Keep in mind the room should be quiet so that they can concentrate, focus, and provide thoughtful and productive answers that are actually helpful for us. The students also need to know whether after the survey how it's going to be presented. So is it going to be handed directly to you and you're the only eyes that are going to see it, or are they going to be expected to stand up in front of the class and tell about themselves? Because that's going to have an effect on what types of information they put down on paper. Finally, we need to evaluate the feedback we receive. We should read through it carefully and take notes. Even if we went digital, we still need to go through that and process it. Are there flags or concerns that we need to pay attention to because they might show up here? Are there obvious groups or class dominant interests? Do any of the students show obvious strengths or weaknesses that we should keep an eye on or monitor? If we use a digital medium, that can also help us to organize the data and run statistics. And then we need to think of other ways that we can use this research to help the class or the individual students. So we got to think about what we're going to do with this information. I mean, remember that, we have gathered this information not just to establish what the majority wants, but also so that we can help identify smaller groups or a student who might be left out or need special segues to feel included. So, for instance, if you're teaching about the Civil War, you might want to use a comparison that the target student is identified with. So maybe you compare it to a Cowboys-Steelers game, and then they're like, oh, I love the Cowboys. So now they feel included and they can relate to the topic. And that's just probably a very bad example, but that's going to be a helpful way to use the information that you gather. So we touched on this a little bit earlier, But in customizing for specific grade levels, we have to remember that the main point of doing surveys and doing all this gathering of information is so that we can ask the questions that give us the information that we can use to help our students and to make a more productive class for them. So basically, we consider the grade levels that we're teaching. Are they young and do they need simple yes or no answers or pictures, or are they older? And so we can give them a more complicated test or a more engaging test with open-ended questions so that they can provide us more feedback. Do we offer up the questions to the class so that we can get, an entire class feedback and they can, kind of bounce stuff off of each other? It's content specific, teacher specific, and student specific. So, basically the cognitive abilities of your grade level are going to determine what kind of surveys or questionnaires or techniques that you choose to use to gather the information that you need. If you can't find a survey already made that represents your curriculum because they offer them online, the different types, the reading interest, the writing interest, the learning strategies, they offer different surveys and questionnaires online, different ideas through teacher websites. But if you're not finding exactly what you need, you can always draft your own and maybe put some of those fun surveys in there and mix it up a little bit. But basically, you're trying to draw them out and get them to give you the information that you can use to help them and you and your entire class. Okay, so my personal survey story comes from my job. I am a media clerk in a middle school library, and promoting literacy and helping children find themselves and happiness in books is exactly the reason that we're here. This is our main purpose. So we use a lot of reading interest surveys like the one on the screen to find out what our students like to read and how they like to read and what their favorite genres are, and their favorite authors. So it is a true joy to be able to bring a kid together with their perfect book or perfect series. And they come in and they can't wait to get the next one. And then they come in and they go, what else can I read? I finished that series. And you're like, So this really helps a lot because we can either find cross genre books that help them or maybe take them down another path. But the information that comes from the surveys is solid gold. We had a little girl, the value of the surveys. We had a little girl last year, and she came in and she's shy and she's quiet and she didn't want to tell anybody anything. And she didn't check out any books for the first couple of months. And then I finally got her to talk to me and she filled out a survey. And I find out that she actually likes high adventure, strong female character books, which you would never guess by looking at her. So we started her down that path, and I had her on series after series after series, and she was in the library every other day checking out books. So I think that's a true success story from the surveys. Another value that we get, a huge value that we get from the reading interest surveys in the Media Center is that it helps us build our curriculum because we can run studies through the computer and find out what we have in our library, but to make sure that it's balanced compared to what the kids are wanting to read and making sure we're diverse, then we need the input. We need to hear what they want, make sure we have what they're currently interested in, and make sure that our library is up to date. So these surveys are solid gold for us, and we use them all the time. So thank you so very much for listening to my strategy. And I'm around if you have any questions. Thank you so much and have a great day.